Millionaire returns after 6 years. What he found his ex-wife doing left him in tears. She knelt in the mud, her hands gentle on the pregnant sow's belly, whispering soft encouragements in the Georgia heat. Unaware that 300 miles away, a man in a corner office had just discovered that every dollar of his fortune had been built on the brilliance she'd given him for free. Welcome back, my lovelies. Get ready for a story that will leave you speechless and make you believe in the power of destiny. Stay with me until the very end, because this story will restore your faith in humanity. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and comment your thoughts throughout the story. Your engagement helps us bring you more incredible narratives. The sun hadn't fully risen when Imani Washington's alarm went off. Not that she needed it. Her body had learned to wake at 4:47 a.m. exactly 7 minutes before the sound. Muscle memory from years of this life. She dressed in the dark. Denim work shirt, already stained at the elbows. Jeans worn soft and thin at the knees. Boots that had been resoled twice because new ones weren't in the budget. She pulled her locks back into a low ponytail, didn't bother with the mirror. There was no point. The cottage she rented sat at the edge of the Morrison property, a generous word for what was essentially a glorified shed with plumbing. One room. A hot plate instead of a stove. A mattress on the floor because the bed frame had collapsed 2 winters ago. But it was hers. Or at least, she paid for it with sweat and silence. Outside, the air was thick and sweet with the smell of pine and livestock. Clarksville, Georgia wasn't much. A town where everybody knew everybody, and if you were new, black, and alone, you felt it in every sidelong glance at the general store. Imani had been here for 5 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Not that she was counting. She walked the dirt path to the main barn, her boots crunching on gravel. The Morrisons owned 200 acres of farmland, pigs, mostly some chickens, a few cows. They'd hired her during their busiest season and kept her on when they realized she worked harder than any 3 men combined. She didn't talk much, didn't complain, didn't ask for more than what she was owed. That made her valuable. That made her invisible. Morning Imani called Mrs. Morrison from the porch of the main house, a sprawling white farmhouse that had been in their family for generations. The older woman was kind enough, in that southern way that felt warm until you realized it kept you at a distance. Morning, ma'am, Imani replied, not slowing her pace. Inside the barn, the pigs were already stirring. She grabbed the feed buckets, her movements practiced and efficient. Pour. Distribute. Check water levels. Inspect for illness or injury. Repeat. She was good at this work. Better than she'd ever imagined she could be. But God, she was tired. Not just physically, though her back ached and her hands were rough as tree bark. She was tired in her soul. Tired of being 29 years old and living like she was 70. Tired of being brilliant and invisible. Tired of surviving instead of living. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Shanice, her younger sister back in Atlanta. Still haven't heard from you. Call me, please. Imani silenced the phone and shoved it back in her pocket. She couldn't call Shanice. Couldn't bear to hear the pity in her sister's voice, the unspoken questions. How did you end up here? What happened to the woman who was going to change the world? What happened was Garrett Mitchell. What happened was love and trust and the naive belief that partnership meant something. What happened was that she gave everything, and when success came, he left her with nothing. Imani pressed her palm against one of the fence posts, steadying herself. She didn't let herself think about him often. Couldn't afford to. Because when she did, the anger came rushing back, hot and consuming and useless. She'd loved him, built him, poured her research, her ideas, her late nights into his dream because she believed they were building something together. And the moment it started working, he was gone. No explanation. No severance. Just a lawyer's letter about dissolving the personal partnership and a suggestion that she pursue other opportunities. She'd tried. God knows she'd tried. But without a degree, she dropped out to work with him. And without references, he refused to provide any. And without money for lawyers to fight for what was rightfully hers, she'd had nothing. So she came here, to the only place that would take her without questions. And she survived. Garrett, 312 miles away, in a glass tower overlooking Manhattan, Garrett Mitchell sat in his corner office and stared at the file on his desk like it might explode. It had arrived that morning via courier, an internal audit his CFO had requested. Routine. Boring. Except it wasn't. Because buried in the documentation of patents and intellectual property was a name he'd spent 6 years trying to forget. Imani Washington, co-researcher, co-developer, original author of the algorithmic framework that had become the foundation of Mitch Tech's flagship product. Garrett's hands shook as he flipped through the pages. Her signature, her research notes, her handwriting in the margins of the early prototypes. How had he forgotten? No, that was a lie. He hadn't forgotten. He'd buried it, convinced himself that her contributions were minimal, that he'd been the visionary and she'd just been support. But the documents didn't lie. Every innovation, every patent, every breakthrough that had made him a millionaire 20 times over, it traced back to her. To late nights in his cramped apartment when she'd worked for free, believing they were partners. To her research from the grad program she'd left to help him. To her brilliance, which he'd repackaged as his own. Garrett stood abruptly, his chair rolling back and hitting the floor-to-ceiling window with a dull thud. He was going to be sick. He'd known, of course he'd known, that leaving her was wrong. But he'd told himself it was necessary. That relationships complicated business. That she'd understand eventually. That she'd land on her feet. He'd never checked. Not once in 6 years. Mr. Mitchell? His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Your 10 o'clock is here. Cancel it, Garrett said, his voice hoarse. Cancel everything today. Sir? Just do it, Rebecca. He grabbed his phone and opened a browser, typing with shaking fingers. Imani Washington, Atlanta. Nothing current. A dead LinkedIn profile from 7 years ago. An old academic article she'd co-authored before dropping out. It was like she'd disappeared. Garrett's chest tightened. Where was she? Was she okay? Had she moved on, built a new life, found someone who actually deserved her? Or had he destroyed her completely? He tried variations of the search. Added Georgia. Added research. Added everything he could think of. Finally, buried 12 pages deep, he found a property record. Washington, Clarksville, Georgia resident since 2020. Clarksville. He'd never even heard of it. Garrett pulled up a map. A tiny town in North Georgia. Rural. Agricultural. What was she doing there? He didn't let himself think. Just grabbed his keys, told Rebecca he was taking a personal day, and walked out of the office that her brilliance had built. He had to find her. He had to see her. He had to, God help him, figure out how to make this right. Even if it was 6 years too late. Have you ever realized too late that you took someone for granted? That their contributions, their sacrifices, their love were the foundation of everything you have? What would you do if you had the chance to make it right? Drop your thoughts below. This is about to get emotional. If you've made it this far into the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us keep bringing you more heartwarming stories like this one. The drive from Manhattan to Clarksville took Garrett 8 hours. He could have flown, should have flown, but something about the distance felt necessary. Like penance. Like the physical journey might prepare him for what he was about to face. It didn't. Nothing could have prepared him for the moment he turned onto rural Route 14 and saw her. The sun was high and merciless when Garrett's rental car, a sleek black sedan that looked obscene against the backdrop of farmland, rolled to a stop near a weathered wooden fence. He saw the pigs first, then the barn, then the figure kneeling in the dirt. Even from a distance, even after 6 years, he knew her. The way she moved, purposeful, efficient, graceful despite the setting. The tilt of her head, the curve of her shoulders. Imani. Garrett's throat closed. She was wearing work clothes, denim stained with mud and God knows what else. Her locks were pulled back, though a few had escaped, framing her face. Her hands, those hands that used to type code and sketch algorithms and cup his face in the dark, were wrist-deep in mud, tending to a pig that lay on its side, clearly in distress. He sat in the car for a long moment, engine idling, watching her. This was wrong. All of it. The setting. The work. The fact that she was here while he'd been in a penthouse. Finally, he forced himself out of the car. The sound of the door closing carried across the quiet morning. Imani looked up. For a moment, a breathless, suspended moment, their eyes met. Garrett watched recognition dawn across her features. Watched shock give way to something harder. Something that looked like a door slamming shut. She stood slowly, wiping her hands on her jeans, her expression carefully blank. Imani, he said, his voice cracking on her name. She didn't respond. Just stood there 30 feet away, looking at him like he was a ghost. Or maybe a nightmare. Garrett took a step closer. Then another. I found you. I've been looking for. Stop. Her voice cut through the air like a blade. Don't come any closer. He froze. What are you doing here, Garrett? The question was simple, but the way she said his name, flat, empty of any warmth, made him flinch. I needed to see you. I needed to. Needed. She laughed, and it was the saddest sound he'd ever heard. You needed? That's interesting. Because 6 years ago I needed you. I needed my research partner to acknowledge my work. I needed my boyfriend to not abandon me. I needed, her voice broke. She cleared her throat. But you didn't care what I needed then, so forgive me if I don't give a damn what you need now. I know. The words tumbled out desperately. I know I have no right to be here. But Imani, I found something. Documents. Patents. The audit showed. Showed what? She crossed her arms over her chest. That you stole from me? That every success you've had was built on my work? Congratulations, Garrett. You figured out what I knew 6 years ago. The venom in her voice should have driven him back to his car. Should have made him leave. But all he could see was the exhaustion in her eyes. The way her hands trembled slightly before she clenched them into fists. This is where you've been? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. This whole time? Don't. She shook her head. Don't you dare pity me. I'm not. Yes, you are. I can see it on your face. You're looking at me like I'm some kind of tragedy. Like you can't believe the brilliant Imani Washington is slopping pigs in rural Georgia. She stepped closer now, anger propelling her forward. Well, let me tell you something. This tragedy is what survival looks like when someone steals your future. This is what happens when you give everything to someone and they take it all and leave you with nothing. Imani, please. No. She was in front of him now, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes, the way her jaw clenched. You don't get to please me. You don't get to show up here in your expensive suit and your guilt and expect me to make you feel better about what you did. That's not why I'm here. Then why? She spread her arms wide. Why now? Why after 6 years of silence? Garrett pulled the folder from his car, hands shaking as he held it out to her. Because I didn't know. I swear to God, Imani, I didn't know the full extent of. She snatched it from him and flipped it open. He watched her eyes scan the pages. Watched her expression shift from anger to something more complex. Pain, vindication, fury, grief all at once. Algorithm development, Washington, she read aloud. Predictive modeling framework, Washington. Machine learning protocol, Washington. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face now. Every single innovation. Every single one. I know. You know? Her voice rose. You know? How long have you known Garrett? Days? Weeks? Or have you known all along and just didn't care? I found out yesterday, he said quickly. I swear. The audit came through and I saw your name and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just knew I had to find you. I had to tell you that everything I have, everything I built, it's not mine. It's yours. It was always yours. Imani wiped at her face with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of mud across her cheek. And what am I supposed to do with that information, Garrett? Pat you on the back for finally acknowledging the truth? Thank you for showing up 6 years too late. No. He stepped closer, and this time she didn't stop him. I came to give it back. All of it. The company. The patents. The money. Everything. She stared at him, disbelief warring with something that looked dangerously close to hope. I don't want your charity. It's not charity. It's restitution. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration and desperation bleeding through. It's the bare minimum of what I owe you. And even then, it won't be enough. Because I didn't just steal your work, Imani. I stole your future. Your dreams. My dignity, she finished quietly. You stole my dignity. Do you know what it's like to be invisible? To pour everything you have into something, into someone, and then be erased? To have people look at you, if they look at you at all, and see nothing. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I gave you everything, Garrett. My research. My time. My love. I believed in you when no one else did. I sacrificed my degree, my career, my future because you promised we were building something together. And the second it started working, you threw me away like I was disposable. I'm sorry. The words felt pathetically inadequate. God, Imani, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back 6 years. Sorry doesn't erase the nights I cried myself to sleep wondering what I did wrong. Sorry doesn't. Her voice broke completely. She turned away from him, her shoulders shaking. Garrett wanted to reach for her. Wanted to pull her into his arms and tell her that he'd spend the rest of his life making this right. But he had no right to touch her. No right to comfort her when he was the source of her pain. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said to her back. "I don't deserve it. I need you to know that I see you now. Really see you. And I'm going to make sure the whole world sees you too." Imani turned slowly, her face wet with tears, her eyes red but fierce. "How?" He pulled out another document, one he'd had his lawyer draft on the drive down. "Half of everything. Legally transferred to you. Your name on every patent. Public acknowledgement of your contributions. And a seat on the board if you want it. Full control. Full credit. Everything that should have been yours from the beginning." She took the document with trembling hands, reading through it slowly. "This is..." She looked up at him, confusion and suspicion mingling on her face. "This is real. As real as I can make it. I already signed. You just need to, if you want to accept it." "Why?" The question came out broken. "Why now? Why not 4 years ago? Or 2 years ago? Why show up now when I've finally learned how to survive without you?" Garrett's eyes burned. "Because I'm a coward who didn't want to face what I'd done. Because I told myself lies to make it easier to sleep at night. Because," his voice cracked, "because I was terrified that if I came looking for you, I'd find out I'd destroyed you. And I couldn't live with that truth." "Well, congratulations." She gestured around them, at the farm, at herself, at the life she'd built from scraps. "You found me. And yes, you destroyed me. But I rebuilt. And I did it without you. I can see that." He took in the strength in her stance, the determination in her eyes despite the tears. "You're incredible. You always were. I was just too selfish to see it." Imani closed the folder and held it against her chest. "I need time. To think. To process. This doesn't fix what you did, Garrett. I know. And I don't know if I can ever forgive you. I know that too." She nodded slowly. "There's an inn in town. The Clarksville Inn. It's the only one. You can stay there. If you're serious about this. But I need space. I need time to figure out what this means." "Of course. Whatever you need." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Imani, for what it's worth, seeing you here, seeing what you've survived, it doesn't make me pity you. It makes me realize just how strong you are. And how weak I've always been." She didn't respond. Just watched him walk back to his car, her arms wrapped around the folder like a shield. As Garrett drove away, he looked in the rearview mirror and saw her still standing there, a solitary figure surrounded by pigs and poverty, holding proof of her stolen genius. And he wept, because he knew that no amount of money, no legal document, no apology could ever truly give her back what he'd taken. But he had to try, even if it took the rest of his life. Imani didn't move for a long time after Garrett's car disappeared down the dusty road. She stood there, clutching the folder to her chest, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack through her ribs. The pig she'd been tending to earlier grunted softly, reminding her that life, her life, didn't stop just because her past had come crashing back. She finished with the sow, her hands moving on autopilot while her mind spun in 1,000 directions. Half of everything. The words echoed in her head like a mantra, like a curse, like a promise too good to be true. By the time she made it back to her cottage, the sun was brutal overhead. She dropped the folder on the small table, stared at it like it might disappear, then forced herself to shower off the day's grime. The water was lukewarm, the cottage's ancient water heater barely functional, but she stood under it until her skin felt raw, as if she could wash away the last hour, as if she could scrub off the feeling of being seen after 6 years of invisibility. When she finally emerged, wrapped in the thin towel that was more holes than fabric, she made herself open the folder again. The legal language was dense, but the meaning was clear. Garrett Mitchell was transferring 50% ownership of Mitch Tech Solutions to her, along with retroactive credit on every patent, every innovation, every product. Her name. Finally, where it should have been all along. Imani's hands shook as she read through the estimated value. $37 million. She had to read it 3 times before the number felt real. $37 million. Her half, which meant the company she'd helped birth in a cramped studio apartment, was worth over $70 million now. The laugh that escaped her throat was sharp and bitter. She pressed her palm to her mouth, but it kept coming. Hysterical giggles that turned into sobs, her body folding over the table as 6 years of suppressed grief came pouring out. She'd been living on $28,000 a year, rationing groceries, wearing clothes until they fell apart. And the whole time, He'd been profiting from her brilliance. 3 days passed before she went into town. She needed supplies, needed to think, needed to be anywhere but that cottage with that folder burning a hole in her consciousness. The general store sat on Main Street, a generous name for what was essentially 3 blocks of faded storefronts. Imani grabbed a basket and moved through the aisles, acutely aware of the eyes following her. She'd never quite fit in Clarksville. Too educated. Too northern. Too black in a town that was 92% white and preferred it that way. Well, look who it is. The voice came from behind her, dripping with false sweetness. Imani turned to find Diane Chambers, 50-something, blonde highlights, and the unofficial mayor of local gossip, blocking the aisle with her cart. "Mrs. Chambers," Imani said politely, trying to move past. "Heard you had a visitor the other day. Fancy car. City man." Diane's eyes glittered with curiosity. "He looked rather close to you, if you know what I mean." The implication hung in the air, ugly and familiar. "Just an old colleague," Imani said evenly. Diane's smile sharpened. "Must be nice, having colleagues who drive cars like that. Though I suppose when you're doing the kind of work you do," she gestured vaguely, "you meet all sorts." The dismissal was clear. In Diane's world, farm work wasn't real work. And Imani wasn't a real person. "Excuse me," Imani said, pushing past. "Of course, dear. Don't let me keep you. I'm sure you have pigs to feed." The laughter from Diane's friends echoed down the aisle. Imani made it to the counter, paid for her items with hands that wanted to tremble, and walked out into the brutal afternoon sun. She made it halfway to her truck before the anger hit. 6 years. 6 years of this. Of being looked down on. Of being dismissed. Of being treated like she was less than. And now she had proof, legal, documented proof, that she was worth more than this entire town combined. But what could she do with it? Take the money and run? Disappear to Atlanta, to New York, to anywhere but here? Or stay and shove that proof in every condescending face that had ever looked through her? That evening, there was a knock on her door. Imani opened it to find Garrett standing on her tiny porch, looking uncomfortable in jeans and a t-shirt. Clearly new, tags probably cut off that morning. His attempt to blend in was almost comical. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "I wanted to check on you. See if you'd read the documents. See if I'd made your life easier by signing them and disappearing?" Garrett flinched. "No, that's not." "Then what?" She stepped out onto the porch, forcing him back. "You think because you showed up with paperwork, we're suddenly good? That I'm supposed to be grateful? I don't expect gratitude." "Good. Because you won't get it." She crossed her arms. "Do you have any idea what my life has been like here, Garrett? Do you have any concept of what it's like to be the only black woman in a town that barely tolerates your existence? To work yourself to exhaustion every single day and still be treated like you're invisible? I can't imagine." "No, you can't." Her voice rose. "Because you've been in boardrooms, corner offices. You've had people listen when you speak. Respect your ideas. Value your presence. While I've been shoveling pig shit and being mocked at the grocery store." Garrett's jaw clenched. "I'm sorry." "Stop saying that." She wanted to hit something. Wanted to scream. "Your sorry means nothing. It changes nothing. You can't apologize away 6 years of my life. I know that. Do you?" She stepped closer, fury radiating from her. "Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a guilty conscience trying to buy its way to peace. You waltz in here with your legal documents and your belated recognition, and you think that fixes it? That we can shake hands and move on? That's not what I think. Then what do you think?" She was shouting now, months, years of suppressed rage finally breaking free. "What do you want from me, Garrett? Forgiveness? Absolution? A pat on the back for finally doing the bare minimum? I want," he stopped, his face crumpling. "I want to make it right." "You can't." The words ripped out of her. "You can't make it right. You can give me money, you can give me credit, you can give me the whole damn company, and it still won't give me back what you took. My 20s. My confidence. My belief that I mattered." Tears streamed down her face now, hot and angry. "I loved you. I loved you so much I gave up everything. And you threw me away like I was nothing. Like I was disposable. Like 6 years of partnership, of love, meant nothing the second you got what you wanted. That's not true. Isn't it?" She wiped at her face viciously. "Then why did you leave? Why didn't you fight for us? Why didn't you?" Her voice broke completely. Garrett took a step toward her, then stopped, clearly torn between reaching for her and respecting her space. Because I was terrified. Of what? Of you. The admission seemed to cost him. Of how much I needed you. Of how completely you saw through me. I was this mediocre white guy with a decent idea, and you were brilliant. Genuinely, terrifyingly brilliant. And the more successful we got, the more I realized that everyone would eventually see it too. That they'd realize I was nothing without you. Imani stared at him, shocked into silence. So I left, Garrett continued, his voice raw. I convinced myself it was about business, about needing to be independent, about all these noble reasons. But the truth is, I was a coward. I couldn't handle being the less talented one. So I erased you, took credit for your work, built an empire on your foundation, and told myself I'd earned it. He dragged a hand over his face. And I've been lying to myself every day since. Telling myself you were fine. That you'd moved on. That you were probably better off without me. Because if I admitted the truth, that I'd destroyed you to prop up my own ego, I'd have to face what kind of person that made me. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of 6 years' worth of unspoken truths. I don't know what to do with that, Imani finally said, her voice small and tired. I don't know how to process any of this. I'm not asking you to. Garrett's eyes were red-rimmed. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know the truth. All of it. Even the ugly parts. Especially the ugly parts. Imani sank down onto the porch steps, suddenly exhausted. After a moment, Garrett sat beside her, not too close, leaving space between them. They sat in silence as the sun began to set, painting the Georgia sky in shades of orange and purple. I read the documents, Imani said finally. Multiple times. And I don't trust it. I don't trust you. She looked at him. How do I know this isn't another trick? Another way to ease your conscience and then disappear? You don't, Garrett admitted. I've given you no reason to trust me. But the documents are ironclad. My lawyer made sure of that. Even if I wanted to back out, which I couldn't. It's legally binding. Money doesn't fix this, Garrett. I know. And I don't know if I can ever forgive you. I know that too. She turned to look at him fully. Then why are you still here? Why not just sign the papers, transfer the money, and disappear back to your life? Garrett met her gaze, and there was something raw and desperate in his eyes. Because leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. And I've spent 6 years being successful and miserable. And seeing you again, even angry, even hurt, reminded me what actually matters. Don't, Imani whispered. Don't make this about feelings. Don't make this about us. Why not? His voice was soft. Isn't that what this has always been about? Isn't that why it hurts so much? She wanted to deny it. Wanted to tell him that she'd moved on, that she felt nothing, that he was just a ghost from a past she'd buried. But she'd never been good at lying. I can't do this, she said instead, standing abruptly. I can't. I need you to go. Imani, please. She wouldn't look at him. Just go. Give me space to think. To figure out what I want. Without you here confusing everything. Garrett stood slowly. Okay, I'll go. But I'm not leaving town. Not until we figure this out. Not until, he stopped himself. Just, please don't disappear on me. Please let me try to make this right. Imani didn't respond. Just stood there with her arms wrapped around herself, watching as he walked to his car. After he drove away, she sank back onto the steps and stared at the darkening sky. $37 million. Legal recognition. Everything she'd been denied for 6 years. So why did it feel like it wasn't enough? Why did part of her, a part she desperately wanted to ignore, wish he'd stayed? The storm came 3 days later, sudden and violent, the way Georgia storms do in late spring. Imani was in the farrowing barn when the first crack of thunder split the sky. She'd been checking on a sow due to give birth any day, and the animal was already anxious, pacing her pen with nervous energy. Easy, girl, Imani murmured, running a calming hand along the pig's back. Just a little noise. Nothing to worry about. But the sow knew better than Imani did. The rain came all at once, not a gradual build but a deluge that turned the world gray and deafening. Within minutes, the dirt paths became rivers of mud. Within an hour, the power went out. Imani worked by flashlight, making sure all the animals were secure, that the barn doors were properly latched. The wind howled like something alive and angry, rattling the old structure until she wondered if it might simply blow apart. She was securing the last gate when she heard it, a sharp crack followed by a thunderous crash that shook the ground beneath her feet. She ran outside into the storm, and her heart dropped. One of the massive oak trees near the property line had split, half of it falling directly across the road. The same road that was the only way in or out of the Morrison farm. No, 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 she breathed, rain instantly soaking through her clothes. She pulled out her phone, no signal. The storm must have taken out the cell tower. She was trapped. The realization settled over her like a weight. The Morrisons were still in Tennessee visiting family. She was alone on 200 acres with no way to call for help. No way to leave if something went wrong. Thunder cracked again, closer this time, and Imani made a decision. She couldn't stay in the cottage. It leaked in 3 places, and the roof sounded like it might tear off. The main barn was sturdier, built to withstand generations of storms. She gathered what supplies she could, flashlight, blanket, the emergency radio, what little food she had, and ran for the barn. She didn't hear the car over the storm. Didn't know anyone was there until the barn door slid open, and a soaking wet figure stumbled inside. Imani spun, her flashlight beam landing on Garrett Mitchell, drenched to the bone and breathing hard. "What the hell are you doing here?" she demanded. "Tree," he gasped, pushing wet hair out of his eyes. "There's a tree across the road. I barely made it through before another one fell. We're blocked in. We're not anything. What are you even doing out here in this storm?" Garrett looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "You're out here alone in a storm with no power, and you think I'd just stay at the inn? I came to make sure you were okay. I don't need." A massive crack of lightning struck somewhere close, the thunder simultaneous and deafening. The barn lights flickered, the emergency generator kicking on, then died again. In the darkness, Imani could hear Garrett's ragged breathing, could feel the weight of the storm pressing down on them. "Fine," she said finally. "You can stay until the storm passes. But stay on your side of the barn." Agreed. They spent the first hour in tense silence. Imani tended to the animals, checking water levels and making sure none of them were in distress. Garrett found a corner, stripped off his soaking jacket, and tried to make himself useful organizing feed sacks. But as the storm intensified, wind screaming, rain hammering the metal roof, the barn felt smaller and smaller. "How long do these usually last?" Garrett asked, his voice cutting through the noise. "Hours. Sometimes all night." Imani didn't look at him. "There's a blanket in the tack room if you're cold." "I'm fine. Suit yourself." More silence. Then, "I'm sorry." Imani's hands stilled on the gate latch. "For what?" "There's so much to choose from." "For showing up uninvited." "For," he gestured helplessly around them. "For all of it." "Stop apologizing, Garrett. It doesn't help." "Then what is help?" His frustration bled through. "Tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix this." "You can't." She spun on him. "How many times do I have to say it? You can't fix this. You can throw money at me, you can grovel, you can show up in storms like some kind of tragic hero, but none of it changes what you did." "I know that. Do you?" She stalked toward him. "Because it seems like you think grand gestures will solve everything. That if you're just persistent enough, I'll eventually cave and forgive you, and we can ride off into the sunset." Garrett's jaw clenched. "That's not what I think." "Then what do you think?" "I think I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me." The words exploded out of him. "I think I was given a gift, your brilliance, your love, your partnership, and I threw it away because I was too insecure to appreciate it. I think I've spent 6 years being successful and empty, and I didn't even understand why until I saw you again." Imani stared at him, her chest heaving. "And I think," Garrett continued, quieter now, "that even if you never forgive me, even if you take the money and disappear and I never see you again, I need you to know that you were never invisible to me. Not really. I couldn't handle how much you mattered. How much I needed you. So I convinced myself you didn't. And I've been lying to myself ever since." The barn went silent except for the storm raging outside. "You don't get to do this," Imani said, her voice shaking. "You don't get to show up and say things like that and expect me to. To what? To remember what it felt like to love you." The admission ripped out of her. "To remember that before you destroyed me, you were my best friend. My partner. The person I trusted more than anyone in the world." Tears streamed down her face now. "I gave you everything, Garrett. And it still wasn't enough. So how am I supposed to trust that this time would be different? How am I supposed to believe that you won't leave again the second things get hard?" "I can't make you believe that," Garrett said quietly. "I can only show you. If you'll let me. And if I can't get past what you did, then I'll accept that. But I'm not walking away again. Not unless you explicitly tell me to. Because last time, I left without fighting, without giving us a chance. And I won't make that mistake twice. Lightning illuminated the barn for a brief moment, and Imani saw the truth written all over his face. The regret, the determination, the desperate hope. I don't know what to do with you, she whispered. You don't have to know. Not yet. Just don't shut me out completely. Let me prove that I've changed. People don't change, Garrett. They do if they lose everything that matters. The storm raged for 6 more hours. At some point, exhaustion won over anger. Imani found herself sitting on a hay bale, wrapped in the blanket she'd brought, while Garrett sat across from her with his back against the wall. Tell me about the pigs, he said into the darkness. What? The pigs? You clearly care about them. Tell me about them. It was such an absurd request that Imani almost laughed. But something about the genuine curiosity in his voice made her answer. That one over there, the big one, is Marigold. She's the oldest. Bad attitude but smart as hell. That's Clover, she's pregnant, due any day now. And the little one sleeping in the corner is Honey. She was the runt of her litter. Wasn't supposed to survive, but, Imani's voice softened. She was a fighter. Like you, Garrett said quietly. Don't. It's true. You survived what I did to you. You rebuilt. That takes strength most people don't have. Imani pulled the blanket tighter. I didn't have a choice. We always have a choice. You chose to keep going. To keep fighting. Even when it would have been easier to give up. There were days I wanted to, she admitted. The darkness made it easier to be honest. Days I thought maybe it would be better to just stop. But then I'd think about how you'd won. How you'd taken everything, and I'd let you. And that pissed me off enough to get out of bed. Garrett was quiet for a long moment. I'm glad. That you pissed me off? That you didn't give up? That you're here? That I get the chance, even if it's a slim one, to try to make things right? Imani didn't respond. Couldn't. Because part of her, the part she'd been trying to silence, was glad too. Glad he'd come back. Glad he'd found the truth. Glad she wasn't alone in this barn with this storm. And that terrified her more than anything. By dawn, the storm had passed. They emerged from the barn into a world washed clean. The air smelled like earth and rain and new beginnings. The trees still blocked the road, but the sun was shining, and in the distance, Imani could hear chainsaws, neighbors already working to clear the damage. I should go, Garrett said, though he didn't move. Let you get back to your day. Yeah, but neither of them moved. They stood there in the morning light, muddy and exhausted, the barn at their backs and the uncertain future ahead. Thank you, Imani said finally, for checking on me, for staying. You don't have to thank me. I know. But, she met his eyes. Thank you anyway. Garrett nodded slowly. Can I come back? Not to pressure you. Just to help. With the farm. With whatever you need. No expectations. Just let me be useful. Imani should have said no. Should have sent him away, signed his papers, and moved on with her life. But she found herself saying, the farrowing barn needs repairs. Storm damage. If you're serious about helping. I am. Then come back tomorrow. Early. Farm work starts at 5. A slow smile spread across Garrett's face. I'll be here. As he walked away, Imani touched the folder in her pocket, still there, still unsigned. She didn't know if she could forgive him. Didn't know if she could trust him. But maybe, just maybe, she could give him a chance to prove he'd changed. One day at a time. Garrett showed up at 4:47 a.m. Imani was already in the barn measuring feed when she heard his car pull up. She'd expected him to be late. City people always were. But there he was, right on time, wearing new work boots that clearly hadn't seen a day of actual work. Morning, he said, slightly breathless like he'd been rushing. Morning. She handed him a bucket. Pigs in the East Pen need feeding. 2 scoops each. Don't overfill. Yes, ma'am. They worked in silence for the first hour. Imani watched him struggle with the weight of the feed bags, saw him wrinkle his nose at the smell, noticed the way he had to stop and catch his breath after mucking just 2 stalls. But he didn't complain. Didn't quit. By mid-morning, they were both covered in sweat and mud. Imani found herself almost impressed despite herself. Take a break, she said, tossing him a water bottle. Before you pass out. Garrett caught it gratefully and collapsed onto a hay bale. How do you do this every day? You get used to it. I don't think I would. You don't have to. She sat on the bale across from him. You can go back to your corner office anytime. This isn't your world. It could be. Imani's eyes narrowed. Don't what? Don't romanticize this. Don't look at poverty and struggle and call it authentic or real. This isn't some pastoral fantasy, Garrett. This is survival. He nodded slowly. You're right. I'm sorry. They sat in silence, drinking water, the morning sun streaming through the barn slats. Can I ask you something? Garrett said finally. Depends on the question. Why here? Why Clarksville? You could have gone anywhere. Back to Atlanta. To another city. Why did you choose this? Imani's jaw tightened. I didn't choose it. It chose me. What does that mean? She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, after you left, I tried to find work. Real work. In my field. But without a degree. Her voice went flat. Without references. Without proof of my contributions. No one would hire me. Garrett's hands clenched around the water bottle. I burned through my savings in 3 months, Imani continued. Took whatever jobs I could find. Waitressing. Retail. Cleaning offices at night. But it wasn't enough. The city, it swallows you whole when you have nothing. And I had nothing. Imani, let me finish. Her eyes were distant, seeing the past. I was sleeping in my car outside a Walmart when my sister found me. Shanice. She's 5 years younger than me, and she was horrified. Wanted me to move in with her. But she was barely making it herself, and I couldn't. Her voice cracked. I couldn't let her see me like that. Couldn't let her fix me. She wiped at her eyes roughly. So I lied. Told her I had a job opportunity in North Carolina. Told her I was fine. And I drove. Just drove until my car died in some tiny town in South Carolina. Used the last of my money to fix it. Saw an ad at a gas station. Farm help needed. Room and board included. So you came here. So I came here. She met his eyes. Mrs. Morrison was kind. Didn't ask questions. Gave me the cottage and a job, and didn't care that I was overqualified. Didn't care that I had a story I wasn't telling. She gave me a chance to survive. So I took it. Garrett's face had gone pale. I did that to you. I put you in that position. Yes. The single word hung between them like an indictment. Is your sister? Does she know where you are now? She knows I'm in Georgia. Calls every few weeks. I keep telling her I'm fine. Imani's smile was bitter. I've gotten very good at lying. Garrett stood abruptly, pacing the small space. God, Imani. I never wanted. What did you want? She stood too, anger rising again. When you left, what did you think would happen to me? I thought you'd be angry. I thought you'd, I don't know, find another job. Move on. Find someone better. Someone better, she repeated. Like it was that simple. Like you didn't take my credibility, my references, my proof of competence when you erased me from the company records. I didn't erase you. Yes, you did. She pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. Look at your company website. The About Us page. The origin story. She thrust the phone at him. Garrett took it reluctantly, his eyes scanning the text. She watched his face as he read about the visionary founder, who single-handedly developed revolutionary AI algorithms and built the company from the ground up. No mention of Imani. No mention of a partner. She'd been written out of the story completely. I didn't. He looked up at her, stricken. I didn't write this. My marketing team. Your marketing team wrote what you told them. What you let them believe. She took the phone back. For 6 years, you've been taking credit for my work. Standing on stages. Giving interviews. Building a reputation as some kind of genius. And the whole time I was here. Invisible. I'll change it, Garrett said immediately. Today. I'll have them rewrite the entire site. It's too late. Imani's voice broke. Don't you understand? You can change the website. You can transfer money. You can acknowledge me now. But you can't give me back those 6 years. You can't undo the nights I went to bed hungry because I couldn't afford food. You can't erase the shame of being treated like I was nothing. She turned away from him, her shoulders shaking. Do you know what that does to a person? To be brilliant and be told you're worthless? To know what you're capable of and have no one believe you. Garrett moved closer, his voice raw. No, I don't know. And I can never know. But I'm begging you to let me try to understand. To let me. He pulled something from his back pocket. A small, worn notebook. What is that? Imani asked. I found it. Last week. When I was going through old files. He held it out to her. It's yours. Imani took it with trembling hands. The moment she saw the cover, cheap black composition book, her name written in silver marker, her breath stopped. My research journal, she whispered. I didn't know I still had it. It was in a box in storage. But when I found it, Garrett's voice broke. I read it. Every page. Every note. Every brilliant idea. And I realized just how much I'd stolen from you. Imani flipped through the pages, seeing her own handwriting from 7 years ago. The algorithms. The frameworks. The late-night breakthroughs. Every innovation that had made Mitch Tech millions was in this notebook, written in her hand, dated before Garrett had filed a single patent. This is proof, she said quietly. Legal proof. If I wanted to, I could sue you. For everything. I know. I could destroy you. I know that too. He met her eyes. That's why I'm giving it back. No conditions. Whatever you want to do with it, sue me, go public, use it to claim full ownership. I won't fight you. Imani stared at him, the notebook heavy in her hands. Why? Because it's yours. Because I owe you the truth. All of it. Even the parts that damn me. She sank onto the hay bale, clutching the notebook to her chest. 7 years ago, she'd filled these pages with hope and ambition, and the naive belief that brilliance mattered more than anything else. How wrong she'd been. There's something else in there, Garrett said quietly. Near the back. Imani flipped to the last few pages and froze. It was a series of entries she'd forgotten she'd written. Personal notes, not research. Dated from their early days together. G brought coffee today. Remembered I take it with honey. Small thing, but it matters. Late night coding. G fell asleep on the couch. He looked peaceful. Made me think we could actually do this. He called me brilliant today. Not in a patronizing way. Like he really sees me. I think I'm falling in love with him. I've decided. I'm leaving the program. We're going to build something amazing together. I trust him. I trust us. The last entry was dated 3 days before Garrett had left. Something feels off. G has been distant. But I'm sure it's just stress. We've been partners too long for it to be anything else. We'll get through this. We always do. Imani couldn't read anymore. Couldn't bear to see her own naive hope immortalized in ink. I was so stupid, she whispered. No. Garrett's voice was fierce. You were trusting. You were loving. You were everything good. And he knelt in front of her. I was the stupid one. I had everything. Your brilliance. Your love. Your trust. And I destroyed it because I was too weak to deserve it. Get up, Imani said, her voice hollow. Don't kneel to me. Don't, I can't. But the tears came anyway. 6 years of holding them back, of staying strong, of surviving. And for the first time since Garrett had reappeared in her life, she let herself grieve. Not just for what he'd done, but for who she'd been. The hopeful, brilliant woman who'd believed love and partnership were enough. That woman was gone. And Imani didn't know if she could ever get her back. Garrett came back every day for 2 weeks. He showed up at dawn, worked until his hands blistered and his back ached, and never once complained. He learned the rhythms of the farm, which pigs were temperamental, which fences needed daily checking, how to tell when a sow was about to farrow. He was terrible at it at first, but he got better. And despite herself, Imani found the anger softening into something more complicated. On the 8th day, Clover went into labor. Imani had been expecting it, had prepared the farrowing pen, but the delivery was complicated. The first piglet came breech, and Clover was panicking, thrashing in pain and fear. I need help, Imani called out, her arms already wrist-deep as she tried to reposition the piglet. Garrett appeared at her side immediately. What do you need? Hold her steady. Talk to her. Keep her calm. For the next 2 hours, they worked in tandem. Garrett murmured soothing nonsense to Clover while Imani worked with practiced precision, guiding each piglet into the world. By the time the last one arrived, tiny, wet, and squealing, they were both exhausted and covered in fluids Imani didn't want to identify. But all 11 piglets were alive. We did it, Garrett breathed, staring at the pile of newborns nursing hungrily. You did good, Imani admitted. Most people would have panicked. I had a good teacher. Their eyes met over Clover's sleeping form, and something passed between them. Recognition. Respect. The faintest flicker of the partnership they'd once had. Imani looked away first. On the 11th day, Garrett brought lunch. Not store-bought sandwiches, but actual home-cooked food from the inn's kitchen. Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread still warm in the container. Thought you might be tired of whatever you've been eating, he said, setting it on the workbench. Imani stared at the food like it might be a trap. You didn't have to do this. I know, but I wanted to. They sat in the shade of the barn, eating in companionable silence. The chicken was perfectly seasoned, crispy on the outside and tender within. Imani hadn't had a meal this good in, she couldn't remember how long. "This is really good," she said despite herself. "Mrs. Henderson at the inn made it. I told her it was for someone special." She went all out. "I'm not special." "Yes, you are." Garrett's voice was soft but firm. "You always have been. I was just too blind to see it." Imani set down the chicken leg, her appetite suddenly gone. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Say things that make me want to believe you." Garrett was quiet for a moment. "Would that be so bad? Believing me?" "Yes. Because the last time I believed you, you destroyed me." "I know." He met her eyes. "And I can't promise I won't mess up again. I can't promise I'll always say the right thing or do the right thing. But I can promise that I won't run. Not this time. Whatever happens, whether you forgive me or not, I'm not disappearing again." Imani wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him promises were meaningless. But something in his eyes stopped her. He meant it. "Why?" she asked. "Why does this matter so much to you? You could transfer the money, clear your conscience, and go back to your life. Why stay?" Garrett set down his own food and turned to face her fully. "Because for 6 years I've been successful and empty. I had everything I thought I wanted: money, reputation, respect. But none of it meant anything. And I didn't understand why until I saw you again." "That's not an answer." "Yes, it is." His voice grew raw. "You were the only real thing in my life, Imani. The only person who saw me, really saw me, and didn't need me to be anything other than what I was. And I threw that away because I was terrified. Because being seen meant being vulnerable. And I'd spent my whole life avoiding vulnerability." He dragged a hand through his hair. "My father left when I was 8. Just walked out one day and never came back. And my mother, she tried, but she was so broken by it that she could barely look at me. I reminded her too much of him. So I learned early that needing people was dangerous. That letting them in meant giving them power to destroy you." Imani's breath caught. He'd never told her this. Never let her see this part of him. "When we were together," Garrett continued, "when we were building the company, I needed you so much it terrified me. You were everything. My partner, my best friend, his voice broke. And I couldn't handle it. So when success came, when I had the chance to prove I didn't need anyone, I took it. And I convinced myself it was the right choice. But it wasn't," Imani said quietly. "No, it was the worst choice I've ever made. Because I didn't just lose my partner. I lost the only person who ever made me feel like I was enough exactly as I was." Tears pricked Imani's eyes. "You hurt me so badly, Garrett. I know. I don't know if I can get past it. I don't know if I can trust you again. I know that too." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand covered hers. "But I'm willing to spend however long it takes to earn that trust back. Even if it's years. Even if it's forever." Imani looked down at their joined hands. His palm was calloused now from 2 weeks of farm work. No longer the soft hands of an executive. He was changing. Trying. Maybe she could try too. "Tell me something," she said. "Anything." "What was the moment? The exact moment when you decided to come find me?" Garrett's eyes went distant. "I was in my office. Looking at those documents. Seeing your name over and over. And I remembered something you said once. We were working late, and you were so tired you could barely keep your eyes open. And I asked why you were pushing yourself so hard. Do you remember what you said?" Imani shook her head. "You said, because we're building something that matters. And things that matter are worth the sacrifice." His voice cracked. "And I realized you'd sacrificed everything. Your degree. Your career. Your future. Because you believed in us. In me. And I'd taken all of that and convinced myself it didn't matter." He squeezed her hand gently. "So I came to tell you that it did matter. That you mattered. That I'd been living a lie for 6 years, and I couldn't do it anymore. And what if I'd told you to leave? To never come back? Then I would have left. But at least you would have known the truth. At least you would have had the documents, the proof, the money. At least I would have done one thing right." Imani's throat tightened. She pulled her hand away, but not unkindly. "I need to show you something." She led him to the cottage, the first time he'd been inside since arriving in Clarksville. He tried to hide his reaction to the cramped space, the threadbare furniture, the obvious poverty. But she saw it anyway. Saw the way his jaw clenched, the guilt that flashed across his face. "This is what your success looked like for me," she said quietly. "While you were in penthouses, I was here. Imani, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm trying to make you understand." She pulled out a cardboard box from under her bed. I kept things, even though I probably shouldn't have. She opened the box, and Garrett saw its contents, printed emails from their early days. Photos of them working together, laughing together. A t-shirt from the tech conference where they'd pitched their first prototype. A napkin where she'd sketched an algorithm that became the basis for their second patent. I told myself I kept these to remind me never to trust anyone again, Imani said, running her fingers over a photo of them. But the truth is, I kept them because, her voice broke. Because despite everything, those were the happiest years of my life. And I couldn't let them go. Garrett picked up one of the photos. They were in his old apartment, sitting on the floor surrounded by code printouts and empty coffee cups. Imani was laughing at something, her head thrown back, and Garrett was looking at her like she'd hung the stars. I remember this night, he said hoarsely. We'd finally cracked the prediction algorithm. We were so excited we couldn't sleep. We stayed up until dawn talking about what we'd do with the company once it took off. Imani's smile was bittersweet. All the ways we'd change the world. The good we could do. We could still do it, Garrett said suddenly. Together. The foundation I mentioned, it doesn't have to be just my project. It could be ours. The way it always should have been. Imani looked at him, hope and fear warring in her chest. I don't know if I'm ready for that. That's okay. I'll wait. He set the photo down carefully. I'll wait as long as it takes. They stood there in her tiny cottage, surrounded by ghosts of who they used to be, and Imani felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the possibility of it. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones we loved the most. Have you ever had to decide whether to give someone a second chance after they broke your trust? What helped you make that decision? Share your story in the comments. I think we all need to hear that we're not alone in these struggles. Broken heart. Everything fell apart on a Tuesday. It started with a phone call. Imani was in the barn, teaching Garrett the proper way to trim hooves, when his phone rang. He'd been good about ignoring it, had barely looked at the device in days. But this time, something made him check the screen. His face went pale. I have to take this, he said, already walking away. It's important. Imani watched him disappear around the corner, unease settling in her stomach like a stone. 20 minutes later, Garrett was still on the phone. Imani could hear snippets of conversation, his voice rising, frustrated, then smoothing into the corporate tone she remembered too well. I understand that, Richard, but I told you I'm unavailable for the next month. No, I can't just fly back for a meeting. Because there are more important things than... A pause. Then, how much are we talking? That's substantial. Another pause, longer this time. Let me think about it. I'll call you back in an hour. When Garrett returned, his expression was tight. Distracted. Everything okay? Imani asked, though she already knew the answer. Yeah, just work stuff. Nothing urgent. It was the first lie he'd told her since coming back. And she knew it. Over the next 3 days, the phone calls increased. Garrett tried to hide it, would walk away, lower his voice, keep conversations brief. But Imani wasn't stupid. She'd seen this before. The slow pull back into the world that had made him leave in the first place. On Thursday morning, she found him in his car, laptop open, video conference in progress. He didn't see her approach. Didn't know she was listening. The Mitchell name is on this company, a woman's voice said from the laptop. Your name. And right now you're making us look weak. Investors are asking questions. The board wants answers. We need you back in New York. I told you, I'm dealing with something personal. More personal than a $50 million acquisition? The woman's tone was sharp. Garrett, I respect whatever you're going through, but this is your company. These are your responsibilities. You can't just walk away. Imani saw Garrett's shoulders tense. Saw him drag a hand over his face. I'm not walking away, Christine. I need more time. We don't have more time. The deal closes in 10 days. If you're not here to sign off, we lose it. And if we lose it, we lose investor confidence. It's a domino effect. Then handle it without me. We can't. You know we can't. You're the face of this company. Your reputation is what's selling this deal. A long silence. Then Garrett said quietly, I'll be back Monday. Imani's heart stopped. Good, Christine said. I'll set up the meetings. And Garrett, whatever's going on down there, it can wait. This can't. The call ended. Garrett sat there for a moment, staring at the blank screen. Then he seemed to sense her presence. He turned, and the guilt on his face told her everything. How long have you been standing there? He asked. Long enough. Her voice was cold. You're leaving. It's just for a few days. A week at most. There's a deal. I don't care about the deal. She stepped closer. You said you weren't going anywhere. You promised. And I meant it. I'm coming back. That's what you said last time. The words exploded out of her. You said we were partners. You said we were building something together. And then the second work called, I didn't matter anymore. That's not fair. Isn't it? She gestured at his laptop, his phone, the evidence of the world he'd never really left. You've been here for 3 weeks, Garrett. 3 weeks. And you're already being pulled back. Already choosing the company over. She stopped herself. Over what? Garrett stood, his own frustration rising. Over you? Is that what you were going to say? Yes. Tears burned her eyes. Over me. Over us. Over whatever this is we've been building. We haven't been building anything. The words came out harsher than he intended. You won't even sign the documents. You won't talk about the future. Every time I try to have a real conversation about what happens next, you shut down. So what am I supposed to do, Imani? Put my entire life on hold indefinitely while you decide whether you can forgive me. The question hung between them like an accusation. That's what this is really about, Imani said quietly. You're tired of waiting. Tired of proving yourself. So you're looking for an excuse to leave. That's not true. Then stay. She stepped closer, her voice breaking. If you mean what you say, if I really matter more than that company, then stay. Tell them no. Tell them the deal isn't worth it. Tell them. I can't. Garrett's voice cracked. I can't just walk away from a $50 million acquisition. There are employees depending on me. Investors who trusted me with their money. I have responsibilities. And what about your responsibility to me? The question came out small, wounded. Doesn't that matter? Of course it matters. Not enough, apparently. She wrapped her arms around herself. Not more than the money. Not more than your reputation. Not more than the precious company you built on my back. That's not fair, Imani. I came here. I gave you everything. I'm trying. You're trying? She laughed bitterly. You've been here less than a month, and you're already running back the moment they call. That's not trying. That's playing at redemption while keeping one foot out the door. What do you want from me? Garrett's frustration boiled over. You won't forgive me. You won't trust me. You won't even tell me what it would take to make this right. So yes, I'm going back to New York because at least there, I know what's expected of me. At least there, I'm not constantly being punished for mistakes I can't undo. The words landed like blows. Imani stared at him, seeing the truth written all over his face. He was tired. Tired of groveling. Tired of waiting for forgiveness she might never give. And maybe he was right. Maybe she had been punishing him. Maybe she'd been so focused on protecting herself that she hadn't let him in at all. But that didn't make his leaving hurt any less. You should go, she said quietly. Imani. No. You should go. Back to New York. Back to your company. Back to the life that actually matters to you. She turned away, unable to look at him anymore. I was stupid to think this time would be different. Stupid to think I could ever be more important than your career. That's not. Just go, Garrett. Her voice broke completely. Please. Just go. I'm coming back. I swear, I'm just going for a few days and then. I don't believe you. The words came out flat, final. And honestly, I don't think you believe it either. Garrett stood there, torn between staying and leaving, between the woman he loved and the life he'd built. And Imani watched him struggle with the choice, already knowing which one he'd make. Because people didn't change. Not really. They just became better at hiding who they'd always been. I'll be back by next Friday, Garrett said finally, desperately. 1 week. I'll handle the deal and I'll come straight back. We can figure this out. We can. Don't, Imani interrupted. Don't make promises you won't keep. Don't make this harder than it already is. I'm not giving up on us. There is no us. She finally turned to look at him, her eyes red but dry. There never really was. There was just me, loving you more than you loved me. And I can't do that again. I won't survive it again. Imani, please. Go. She pointed toward the road. Your company is waiting. Your real life is waiting. This, she gestured around them at the farm, at herself. This was always just temporary for you. A detour. A way to ease your guilt before going back to what actually matters. That's not true. Then prove it. She crossed her arms. Stay. Right now. Make the choice. Me or the company. Garrett's face crumpled. I can't. Not like this. Not as an ultimatum. It's not an ultimatum, Imani said softly. It's clarity. And I think we both finally have it. She walked away before he could respond. Walked back to the barn, back to the animals who didn't ask anything of her except food and care. Simple. Uncomplicated. Behind her, she heard Garrett call her name. Heard him start to follow, then stop. Heard his car door open. Close. Heard the engine start. And she kept walking, her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall until he was gone. Because she'd been right all along. People didn't change. And Garrett Mitchell, for all his apologies and promises and grand gestures, was still the same man who'd left her 6 years ago. The only difference was this time, she'd seen it coming. The car pulled away, kicking up dust on the dirt road. Imani stood in the barn doorway and watched until it disappeared completely. Then, and only then, did she let herself break. She sank to the ground, her back against the weathered wood, and sobbed. For the woman she'd been, for the man she'd loved, for the future she'd almost let herself believe in. Her phone buzzed. A text from Garrett. I'm sorry. I'll be back. I promise. Please don't give up on me. She deleted it without responding. Then she pulled out the folder, the one she'd been carrying in her jacket pocket for weeks, and signed. $37 million. Legal recognition. Everything she'd been owed. She could sign it right now. Take the money. Disappear. Start over somewhere new. Build the life she deserved without him. But her hand wouldn't move. Because even now, even after everything, part of her still hoped. Still believed he might come back. Still loved him despite every logical reason not to. And that, more than anything, was what finally broke her completely. 5 days passed in crushing silence. Imani threw herself into work with mechanical precision. Feed the animals. Muck the stalls. Repair fences. Collapse into bed. Repeat. She didn't let herself think. Didn't let herself feel. Because feeling meant acknowledging the hollow ache in her chest that wouldn't go away. The Morrisons returned on the 3rd day, suntanned and cheerful from their trip. Mrs. Morrison took one look at Imani's face and asked if everything was all right. Fine, Imani lied. Just tired. But that night, alone in her cottage, she finally pulled out her phone. 43 missed calls from Garrett. 67 text messages. She didn't read them. Couldn't. Instead, she opened her contacts and scrolled to a name she hadn't called in months. Her sister answered on the 2nd ring. Imani. Shanice's voice was sharp with worry. Oh my God, are you okay? I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I need to tell you something, Imani interrupted, her voice hollow. And I need you to just listen. Can you do that? Of course. Anything. So Imani told her. Everything. About Garrett, about the company, about the 6 years of silence and survival. About him coming back, about the documents, about the money she'd been too scared to accept. About the 3 weeks when she'd almost believed things could be different. And about him leaving. Again. When she finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Imani, Shanice said finally, her voice thick with emotion. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me think you were okay all these years? Because I couldn't bear for you to see me like this. Broken. Surviving instead of living. You're not broken. You're the strongest person I know. I don't feel strong. I feel stupid. For believing him. For thinking this time would be different. Where is he now? New York. Back to his real life. Back to the world where I don't exist. Shanice was quiet for a moment. Did he ask you to wait for him? He said he'd be back. That it was only for a week. But, Imani's voice cracked. I can't do this again, Shanice. I can't spend my life waiting for a man who will always choose something else over me. Then don't, her sister said firmly. Sign those papers. Take that money. Come home to Atlanta. Live with me while you figure out your next move. Go back to school. Build the life you deserve. Without him. It was the logical choice. The safe choice. So why couldn't Imani bring herself to make it? On the 6th day, Mrs. Morrison found Imani sitting by Clover's pen, watching the piglets sleep. You've been awfully quiet, the older woman said, settling beside her with a soft grunt. Want to talk about it? Not really. That young man. Garrett. He left. It wasn't a question. Mrs. Morrison saw everything. He had business. In New York. Imani kept her eyes on the piglets. Important business. And you? What about me? Are you important business? The question landed like a stone in still water. Imani's throat tightened. Apparently not. Mrs. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then, My husband left me once. Did I ever tell you that? Imani looked at her in surprise. No. It was 40 years ago. We'd been married 5 years, and he got restless. Said he needed to find himself. Needed to see if there was more to life than this farm. She smiled sadly. So he left. Moved to Atlanta. Got a fancy job. For 3 months, I didn't hear a word from him. What happened? He came back. Showed up one day, hat in hand, asking if I'd forgive him. Mrs. Morrison's eyes grew distant. And I was so angry, Imani. So hurt. I wanted to tell him no. Wanted to make him suffer the way I'd suffered. But you didn't. No. Because I asked myself one question. Do I love him more than I hate what he did? And the answer was yes. She looked at Imani. That doesn't mean I wasn't hurt. Doesn't mean I trusted him right away. It took years to rebuild that. But I chose to try. And I've never regretted it. Imani wiped at her eyes. What if he doesn't come back? What if I forgive him and he leaves again? Then you'll survive. Just like you did before. But honey, Mrs. Morrison put a weathered hand on Imani's shoulder. You can't protect yourself from pain by refusing to feel anything at all. That's not living. That's just existing. On the 7th day, Imani drove to town. She parked outside the small law office on Main Street and stared at the documents in her lap. All she had to do was sign. Accept the money. Close this chapter. Move on. Her phone rang. Garrett. For the first time in a week, she answered. Imani. His voice was rough, desperate. Thank God. I've been trying to reach you. I know. Are you okay? No, she said honestly. I'm not okay. I'm coming back. Tomorrow. I'm getting on a plane tonight and... Don't. Silence. Then, what? Don't come back, Garrett. Not yet. Not until you've made your choice. I have made my choice. I chose you. I chose us. No, you didn't. Imani's voice was steady now. You went back to New York. You took the meetings. You handled the deal. And maybe that was the right thing to do, I don't know. But you can't keep trying to live in both worlds. You can't keep one foot in your old life and expect me to believe I matter. You do matter. Then prove it. She gripped the phone tighter. Not with words. Not with promises. With action. With choice. Either you're building a life that has room for me in it, or you're not. But I won't be an obligation. I won't be the thing you fit in between board meetings and conference calls. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's honest. She took a breath. I've spent 6 years being invisible, Garrett. Being erased. Being the footnote in someone else's success story. And I won't do it again. Not even for you. So what are you saying? I'm saying you need to figure out what you really want. Not what you think you should want. Not what will make you feel less guilty. But what you actually want. And when you really know, then call me. And if I say I want you, then you better mean it. Because I'm done with half measures. I'm done with maybes. I'm done settling for whatever scraps of attention you have left over after giving everything to your company. Garrett's breath hitched. I hear you. Do you? Yes. His voice dropped to a whisper. I hear you. And you're right. You deserve someone who chooses you first. Who doesn't need to be convinced or reminded. Who just knows. So figure out if you're that person. And if I'm not, Imani's heart cracked. Then at least we'll both know the truth. A long silence stretched between them. I love you, Garrett said finally. I know I have no right to say that. I know I've destroyed whatever we had. But I need you to know, I do love you. I always have. Love isn't enough, Imani said softly. I loved you 6 years ago, and you still left. Love without action is just words. And I'm tired of words. Then I'll show you. I don't know how yet, but I will. I swear to God, Imani, I will figure this out. Okay. Figure it out. And when you do, if you do, you know where to find me. She ended the call before he could respond. Then she picked up the pen, looked at the documents one more time, and made her choice. That evening, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Tech CEO Garrett Mitchell steps down from Mitch Tech Solutions, cites personal priorities. Her heart stopped. She clicked the article with shaking hands. In a surprising move, Garrett Mitchell announced today that he is stepping down as CEO of Mitch Tech Solutions, the AI company he founded 7 years ago. In a statement, Mitchell acknowledged that the company's innovations were developed in partnership with researcher Imani Washington, whose contributions had been previously unrecognized. I built this company on someone else's brilliance, Mitchell stated. And I can no longer, in good conscience, continue to profit from work that wasn't solely mine. Ms. Washington has been offered full partnership in the company, along with retroactive credit and compensation. As for my role, I've realized there are things more important than corporate success. And I've spent too long prioritizing the wrong things. The announcement sent shockwaves through the tech industry, with investors and board members reportedly blindsided by the decision. When asked about his future plans, Mitchell simply said, "I'm going home." Imani read the article 3 times, tears streaming down her face. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Chosen her. Publicly. Irrevocably. Her phone rang again. This time, she answered immediately. "Did you see?" Garrett's voice was breathless. "Did you see what I did? You quit your company. I stepped down as CEO. Christine is taking over. She's more qualified anyway." He laughed, slightly manic. "And I told them about you. About us. About everything. It's all in the press release. Your name. Your contributions. The truth. Garrett, I know what you said. About proving it with action. So I'm proving it. I don't care about the company. I don't care about the money or the reputation or any of it. I care about you. Only you. What are you doing right now?" Imani asked. "Packing. I'm coming back. Tonight. I'm driving through the night because I can't wait until morning. I can't," his voice broke. "I can't spend one more second in this city knowing you're there and I'm here." "You really did it," she whispered. "You really chose me. I should have done it 6 years ago." "I should have," he stopped. "Can I come back? Please. Can I?" "Yes," Imani said, a smile breaking through her tears. "Yes. Come back. Come home. I love you. I love you too," she said. "And this time I actually believe you mean it." Garrett's car pulled up at 3:47 a.m. Imani was waiting on the porch of her cottage, wrapped in a blanket against the cool morning air. She'd been there for hours, unable to sleep, unable to do anything but wait. The headlights cut through the darkness, and then he was there, stepping out of the car, exhausted and rumpled and more real than any fantasy she'd constructed in her head. They stood there for a moment, 20 feet apart, the night heavy with possibility. Then Garrett closed the distance. He didn't say anything, just pulled her into his arms and held her like she was the only solid thing in the world. Imani buried her face in his chest and let herself cry, not from sadness this time, but from relief, from hope, from the terrifying, beautiful realization that maybe, just maybe, this was real. "I'm sorry," Garrett whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry for leaving, for making you doubt. For..." "Stop," Imani said, pulling back to look at him. "No more apologies. Just be here. Really be here." "I am. I swear. I'm here and I'm not going anywhere." She searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. Found only certainty. "What happens now?" she asked. Garrett smiled, that real, unguarded smile she remembered from 7 years ago. "Now, we figure it out. Together. The way we should have the first time." 3 months later. The sun was setting over the Morrison farm, painting everything gold and gentle. But Imani wasn't there to see it. She was in Atlanta, sitting in a lecture hall at Emory University, her laptop open in front of her, notes covering every available surface. "Miss Washington?" She looked up to find Professor Chun smiling at her. "That was an excellent presentation. Your research on algorithmic bias in healthcare systems is exactly the kind of work we need more of in this field." "Thank you, Professor. Have you given any thought to my offer? The PhD program would be lucky to have you." Imani smiled. "I'm seriously considering it." After class, she walked across campus, her phone buzzing with a text. "How'd it go?" "Garrett. Amazing. Professor Chin wants me in the PhD program." "Imani. Of course she does. You're brilliant. Dinner at 7 to celebrate." "Garrett. Can't. Study group until 9. But I'll be home by 10. "Imani. I'll wait up. Love you." "Garrett. Love you too." "Imani." She slipped her phone into her bag and looked around at the campus, at students rushing to class, at the library where she spent most afternoons, at the life she was building. It had taken signing those documents. All of them, accepting her half of the company, not as charity, but as restitution, as acknowledgement of her worth. With that money, she'd enrolled in Emory's graduate program, rented an apartment in Atlanta, started building the future she'd deferred 7 years ago. And Garrett, he'd followed her to Atlanta, sold his penthouse in New York, bought a modest house 15 minutes from her apartment, close but not too close. giving her space to build her own life while being there when she needed him. He'd started the foundation, the Washington Mitchell Foundation, named for both of them, focusing on providing opportunities for underprivileged students in STEM fields. He ran it from a small office, no corner suite, no corporate ladder to climb. Just meaningful work. And Imani, when she had time. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days. Days when old hurts resurfaced. Days when Imani struggled to trust. Days when Garrett had to prove, again, that he'd changed. But they were facing them together. That evening, Imani let herself into Garrett's house. She had a key now, another sign of trust slowly rebuilt. She found him in the kitchen, attempting to cook dinner. That smells. She paused diplomatically. Interesting. It's completely burnt, isn't it? Utterly destroyed. Garrett laughed and turned off the stove. Pizza? Pizza sounds perfect. They ate on the back porch, watching fireflies dance in the warm Atlanta night. Comfortable. Easy. Real. I have something for you, Garrett said, pulling a folder from beside his chair. Imani's stomach tightened. If this is more legal documents. It's not. I promise. Just look. She opened the folder and her breath caught. It was a deed. To the Morrison farm. I bought it, Garrett said quietly. The Morrisons were thinking about selling, retiring to Florida. And I thought maybe we could keep it. Transform it into something. Maybe a retreat center for the foundation. Maybe a place where students could learn about sustainable agriculture and technology. Maybe just somewhere that reminds us of where we started over. Imani's eyes filled with tears. Garrett, it's in both our names, he continued. Equal ownership. Equal say in what happens to it. I know you have school and you're building your career, but I thought, maybe someday, when you're ready, we could do something meaningful there. She set down the deed and took his hand. You really have changed, haven't you? I'm trying. Every day. To be the man you deserved the first time. You're doing more than trying. She squeezed his hand. You're succeeding. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Imani said, I saw Shanice today. She wants to meet you. Officially. Garrett's eyes widened. Really? Really? She's cautiously optimistic. Says any man who would publicly acknowledge stealing credit and step down from his own company might actually deserve a second chance. High praise. From Shanice? It's practically a marriage proposal. They both froze at the word. Garrett cleared his throat. Is that something you'd want? Eventually? Not now, obviously, but... Garrett. Yeah. Ask me again in a year. When we've proven we can do this. When we've built something real that isn't just built on guilt and atonement. He nodded, relief and understanding in his eyes. A year. I can do that. Besides, Imani added with a small smile, I have a PhD to finish. And you have a foundation to run. We have time. All the time in the world, Garrett agreed. 1 year later, Imani stood in the barn at the Morrison farm. Their farm now, surrounded by 24 students from the foundation's first cohort. They were urban kids, mostly, who'd never seen a pig up close, never understood where food came from, never thought about the intersection of agriculture and technology. Now they were learning, growing, discovering possibilities they'd never imagined. Garrett stood at the back of the group, watching her teach with barely contained pride. When she caught his eye, he smiled. That same unguarded smile that had made her fall in love with him a lifetime ago. After the session ended and the students dispersed, he approached her. You're incredible, you know that? I have a good partner, she said. Finally. About that. Garrett reached into his pocket. I know you said to wait a year. And it's been 1 year and 2 months, actually, but who's counting? Garrett, Imani breathed. He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it. Inside was a simple ring. No massive diamond, just a single sapphire the color of the Georgia sky. Imani Washington, he said, his voice shaking slightly. 7 years ago, I had you and I lost you because I was too stupid to recognize what mattered. I spent 6 years building an empire on your brilliance while you survived on scraps. And somehow, miraculously, you gave me another chance. Tears streamed down Imani's face. I know I can never give you back those 6 years, Garrett continued. I know I can't undo the pain I caused. But I can promise you the next 60 years. I can promise to choose you every single day over everything else. I can promise to build a life with you where you're never invisible, never undervalued, never anything less than the brilliant, beautiful, extraordinary woman you are. He took a breath. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that some people can change? That some love stories get second chances. Imani looked at him, really looked at him. Saw the man who'd hurt her, but also saw the man who'd come back, who'd faced his mistakes, who'd given up everything to prove she mattered. She thought about the girl she'd been 7 years ago, naive, trusting, ready to sacrifice everything for love. And she thought about the woman she was now, educated, empowered, unwilling to settle for anything less than she deserved. That woman knew her worth. And that woman knew, without a doubt, what her answer was. Yes, she said, laughing through her tears. Yes, I'll marry you. Garrett slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home. Like forgiveness. Like everything they'd lost and found and built together. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and smiling, Imani said, "But I have conditions. Anything. Prenup. Equal ownership of everything we build from here on out. My name on every patent, every business, every venture. And," she grinned, "you're taking my last name." Garrett blinked. "What? You heard me. Garrett Washington. You erased my name once. Now you're going to carry it. As a reminder. As a promise. As proof that this time, we're really partners." For a moment, she thought he might argue. Then his face broke into the widest smile she'd ever seen. "Garrett Washington," he tested. "I love it. I love you." "I love you too," Imani said. Finally. Completely. With a whole heart that knows its worth. They stood there in the barn. The place where he'd found her at her lowest, where they'd rebuilt trust one day at a time, and kissed again as the sun set over land that belonged to both of them. Equal partners. Equal owners. Equal voices in the life they were building. 2 years later, Dr. Imani Washington, PhD in computer science, co-founder of the Washington Foundation, published researcher in algorithmic ethics, stood on a stage at a tech conference in San Francisco. In the front row sat her husband, Garrett Washington, beaming with pride. "The narrative we tell about innovation matters," Imani said to the packed auditorium. "For too long, we've celebrated the myth of the lone genius, usually a white man in a garage who single-handedly changes the world. But that's not how real innovation works. Real innovation is collaborative. It's built on the shoulders of people who often go uncredited. People whose contributions get erased." She clicked to the next slide, a photo of her and Garrett from 7 years ago, working late in his cramped apartment. "I was one of those people. I spent years watching someone else take credit for work we did together. And I'm not sharing this story to shame anyone." She glanced at Garrett, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm sharing it because I know I'm not alone. There are thousands of women, people of color, marginalized voices whose brilliance gets stolen, whose contributions get minimized, whose labor goes uncompensated. So here's what I want you to remember. Document your work. Demand credit. Know your worth. And if you're in a position of power, acknowledge your collaborators. Tell the truth about whose ideas built your success. Because real partnership isn't about one person standing in the spotlight. It's about making sure everyone who contributed gets to share it." The auditorium erupted in applause. Later, as they walked hand in hand through the city streets, Garrett said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For letting me be part of your story. Even after everything. Even when I didn't deserve it." Imani stopped walking and turned to face him. "You earned it. By changing. By showing up. By proving that second chances aren't given. They're built. One choice at a time. I'll keep building them," Garrett promised. "Every day. For the rest of our lives." "Good," Imani said, kissing him softly. "Because I'm not done with you yet, Garrett Washington. We have so much more to build together." And as they continued down the street, two partners, two equals, two people who'd lost each other and found their way back, Imani felt something she hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because a man had chosen her, but because she'd chosen herself first, and then chosen to let love back in. On her terms. With her name. With her voice. Finally heard. Finally seen. Finally free.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.